Okay, I think we're waiting on a few more people. I'm just going to give it another minute or two prior to getting started. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining this webinar to begin the Q&A period of the RFQ. Again, we are very excited about this opportunity. On behalf of HCD, DGS, Department of Food and Agriculture, thank you again for your interest in this solicitation. Okay, we can move forward. Oh, by the way, my connection is a little spotty, so I am gonna turn off my video so that there aren't any interruptions. I'm Josh Palmer from the Department of General Services. With me on the panel, among the panelists are Michael Cohen from the Department of Housing and Community Development, Craig Edelman from LaSar Development Consultants, as well as Gabe Spire from LaSar Development Consultants. If you have any general, if we just go back, if you have any general questions and inquiries, please feel free to look at the affordable housing at dgs.ca.gov and or public lands at hcd.ca.gov. And all right, we can move on. And just so that you're aware, if I run through something too quickly, please note that we will be posting this recorded webinar as well as the agenda and the PowerPoint for today's presentation. So today's agenda, we will review the meeting format, question and answer document, the RFQ schedule, a review of the overall opportunity, review section 14671.2 and the trailer bill language, as well as principles and objectives, scoring criteria, and then any additional information and links. With the remaining time, we will open up the Q&A session to not just written questions, but also to any verbal questions that could potentially arise. Please keep in mind, we are going to be referring to the written questions prior to any verbal questions. So that is the priority here. And it's our goal to make sure that we are answering the questions to the best of our ability, so we don't want to miss any of those. This is a webinar format. All participants' cameras are off and their audio is muted. Feel free to ask questions using the chat function of Zoom, but again, we will refer to those after the written Q&A period. Questions which are not answered today will be answered via the Q&A document as described in the RFQ and further on the next slide. There will be an open Q&A session in the chat window at the end of today's presentation until 12 p.m. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be posted to the DGS website along with this presentation, as I mentioned earlier. As noted in the RFQ, the state will respond to questions and or requests for clarification by emailing one attachment containing all questions and requests for clarification received by the deadline along with the answer for each via the Q&A document. We will be sending it to the email addresses which submitted the questions and or requests for clarification to the state by the applicable deadline, as well as the addresses to whom the state emailed for the RFQ. So if your email address was not on there, please feel free to email me, and I will respond with the questions, as well as the email addresses that were used to register for this webinar. The state will be posting the Q&A document on the DGS website. I know that there is a link down at the bar. It's down there, but it's also in the RFQ. So please feel free to reference the RFQ for any of the attachments and links that we discuss in this meeting. So tentative schedule, this is subject to change. However, things are moving correctly and progressively. So we are pleased with that. We are staying on track for everything thus far. We ask that the questions and requests for clarifications are due by August 31st. So if you have any additional questions that are not being answered today, please send those in by August 31st at 5 p.m. The state will respond to those questions on September 7th. They will be posted again to the website as well as being emailed to you. And then the RFQ submittal deadline is still scheduled for September 17th, and respondent interviews the week of October 4th, and hopefully to award the site the week of October 18th. A review of the opportunity. The Fairgrounds is currently home to recurring events with several agricultural uses and buildings and various racetracks and betting facilities. A portion of the Fairgrounds has been declared excess and determined as suitable for housing development under the Executive Order N-06-19 Excess Sites Program. The development of the Fairgrounds is an exciting opportunity to transform this area and have a meaningful positive impact on the South Stockton community. Community and stakeholder input is a critical component throughout the process. We cannot stress that enough. The boundaries of the project area are conceptual at this stage and are subject to change. As such, easements, current leases, uses, current total approximate size, and other rights of way remain to be resolved. The current total approximate size of the subject site is 110 acres, and that is located within the green boundaries. I do recommend that you look at Government Code 14671.2, which is DGS's leasing authority for affordable housing developments. All projects must conform with Government Code section 14671.2. And as well, specifically as written at the time of the lease execution. It does allow for below market rates, below market ground lease and sale of property with state approval. Some of the current potential uses include affordable rental housing, affordable home ownership, park and recreation facilities, and commercial and retail development. Again, those are in the RFQ. Links to those to the trailer bill language are located in the RFQ, as well as 14671.2. The principles and objectives here, we really want to focus on housing mix and affordability, community outreach, partnership and collaboration, financing innovation, utilizing the framework of state sovereignty to achieve better outcomes, timing, efficiency and financial feasibility, equity, accessibility, respondent capacity, sustainability and resiliency, quality architecture and contextual design, construction innovation, and cost efficiency. The state recognizes that this program presents an opportunity to leverage development for the benefit of for multi-benefit outcomes. The state is seeking statement of qualifications from respondents who can demonstrate the capacity, creativity, and commitment needed to support the principles and objectives. The scoring criteria as laid out in the RFQ, housing mix and affordability, financing innovation, timing, efficiency, and financial feasibility, accessibility, sustainability and resilience, cost innovation and cost efficiency, community outreach, partnership and collaboration, utilizing the framework of state sovereignty, equity, respondent capacity, and quality architecture and contextual design. Additional links, again, are as stated in the RFQ, as well as on the state's website, can be found here. Again, this will be posted at the end of or I believe shortly after this meeting. And again, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to email me directly, and my email is in the RFQ as well as on this PowerPoint. We do want to open up this time now to the Q&A box. If you are on Zoom, there should be a Q&A at the bottom. We ask that verbal questions be held until after the Q&A period, and I will turn it over to Craig, who will be moderating the Q&A period.
Thanks, Josh. So hi, everybody. I'm Craig Edelman. I'm a senior principal with Lazard Development Consultants, and we are consultants to Department of General Services and also working with HCD on the implementation of the program. So I am here to help moderate questions. I am not seeing any questions in the Q&A right now. But again, we ask that you submit those in writing. And then if there are follow-up questions to them, please go ahead and use the raise hand feature.
It looks like we do have one raised hand.
Jack Robertson has his hand raised. Can we unmute Jack and see the status of his issue?
Hi, I was actually trying to write it, sorry, but
okay. Go ahead and write it in, Jack, please. And then
while I have the mic, though, is the land intended to be all leased or potentially a combination of for sale, fee simple transaction, or?
I think it's fair to say, Josh, or Michael, feel free to jump in. I think it's fair to say that our preference is to lease it, but we do have the option to sell portions. Please, again, see the trailer bill language that Josh cited earlier, which addresses that authority.
Thank you.
We have a question from Peter Ragsdale, who believes he recalls that there was an MHP reservation for the downtown Stockton lot. Is there any contemplation of complementary funding? So I'm going to assume, Peter, that you're using downtown Stockton lot as an example. Just to clarify, I don't believe that's at all connected with this this opportunity. There is not a reservation, so I believe that's in response to the excess sites property that is currently under development in Stockton. We do not currently have a reservation of any state funding or any priority for state affordable housing funding associated with the program. That is potentially subject to change, but certainly should not be assumed at this time. Raul Hernandez is asking, how will local hire weigh into the scoring system? What category does local hire fall into? Let's see, I think I'm going to defer to others, or perhaps we'll get back to you. Raul, go ahead, Josh.
Raul, I think that's a question that we're going to have to contemplate at additional length. Perhaps we can follow up. That will certainly be one of our follow-up questions. I want to make sure that we address that one appropriately. Certainly, it's something that we are taking very seriously. So I want to make sure we have the correct answer for you. But thank you. That's a good question, Raul.
So we will follow up on that one. Peter is asking, are there any reports or details on the current infrastructure status or needs, sewer, water, storm drain, et cetera?
Yeah, Peter, we are actively putting together those. We are conducting a phase 2 as we speak. That should be, available shortly, definitely prior to RFQ submission. And Craig, you also want to answer that question?
No, I'm sorry. I'm trying to process these in Zoom as we go. So.
Yeah, so we know that there are some infrastructure needs, certainly. We are in continual conversation with the city of Stockton about what that infrastructure would look like. We do know that there is going to be a full assessment needed of the infrastructure. We have to assume that much of the infrastructure to support a development of this type and size would probably need new infrastructure.
Not seeing any open questions in the Q&A at the moment. Let's see, I see that Carol has a hand raised. Can we unmute Carol?
Hi, Joshua and Craig. My question regards to state funding such as MHP bonds, 4% tax credits. In the RFQ, it states that we're not to use those sources of funds. Is that accurate?
Yeah, Carol, no, I think that might be a slight difference of what we're talking about here. So all competitive funding opportunities will still be there but as Peter just asked, was there a reservation for MHP or is there an MHP set aside? No, there is not a specific MHP set aside. And as Craig mentioned, that is subject to change, but no, all competitive tax credits are going, or bond allocations will be available.
Perfect, thank you.
We did receive another question from Michael Mark regarding community concerns to piggyback off of Raul's question. In the scoring parameters, are a developer coming to the table committing to local construction workforce agreement matters? Michael, do you mind clarifying that question a little bit for me? Can we take Michael off mute there for a second so we can? Michael, are you able to go off mute?
I believe so now. Am I unmuted?
We can hear you.
Yes, you are.
No, I appreciate the chance to speak. My question was piggybacking off Raul Hernandez. In the RFQ, there's quite a bit of scoring parameters. If a developer so chooses to go forward and submit an RFQ, any type of agreements that focuses on local workforce, does that tie into the development process and the scoring parameters?
Specifically in the scoring parameters, I think that we need to have additional feedback from our executive leadership on scoring that, but certainly local construction workforce is something that's important to doing this properly. We need to further contemplate exactly what that means and how that would be able to incorporate into the scoring. So I'm not exactly sure about that, but certainly we want to address those needs.
Yeah, and I can jump in and just say we don't have a specific criteria called out for workforce in the selection for the RFQ. But just a reminder that this is a request for qualifications. So we're not looking for proposals. I would say in part our vision is that that would be fleshed out as part of the community process, as well as several other categories. So as we said in response to Raul's question, we'll get back to you with more clarification in terms of which criteria specifically that we see that relating to. But I think I can say that we aren't looking or expecting for specific construction workforce proposals as part of this qualifications-based process. But we would be looking for developers who can demonstrate that they have performed strong on local hiring in previous experience.
I appreciate that. And while I have the mic, just for clarification, this is a prevailing wage public works project, correct?
This is prevailing wage, correct.
Okay, and maybe a clarifying statement. When you stated RFQ for the individuals who are interested, the parameters of previous projects and the ability to have community input within their, I guess, requests for qualifications would be part of that scoring parameters. That's what I'm hearing.
Correct.
Okay. I appreciate that.
This process is selecting a developer to proceed with the process based upon qualifications, not a specific proposal, because we don't have enough information yet to be able to create a detailed proposal. And things like workforce targets and commitments would be part of what we want to flesh out in that process. We've got a question from Rebecca Desmond. California Fair Service Authority is a joint powers authority risk sharing pool, general liability coverage. I'd like to clarify that CFSA's coverage excludes any non-fair operations activities, such as all activities related to planning and construction of a housing development. How soon would there be a legal boundary differentiation between the two properties? This will be critical to protecting the second DAA and the CFSA risk pool from being involved in any general liability claims resulting from this process and project. I think I can state with a high degree of certainty that we'll have to get back to you on the response to this question, which is fairly detailed. Rebecca, I appreciate it and appreciate raising the issue. Josh,
I would just like to add, we would certainly know what that looks like in the pre-construction phase. That timing, I can't even begin to tell you, but we would definitely know prior to any vertical improvements that we would certainly know what that site is going to look like.
Good point. Jack Robertson is asking, would prevailing wages apply to the market rate vertical improvements? And I believe the definitive answer to that is yes.
Yes. You know, to follow up a little bit more on Rebecca's question, once a developer is selected and we begin that process of really understanding what the defined boundaries are, and, you know, we're going to have a tremendous amount of time of community outreach, community input, certainly a lot of dialogue. We won't know what the true site delineation is going to look like for some time. You know, we have a lot of conversations that still need to be had with the developer, the city, the community at large, and not necessarily in that order of preference, just they all need to be brought in together to define that.
Thanks, Josh. I believe, Janice, I'm seeing that Carol has her hand raised. And so we don't have any questions in the queue. So why don't we go ahead to Carol?
I just want to follow up. I know you said you're going to get back to us. I understand the infrastructure for prevailing wage, but is that also prevailing wage going to be part of single family housing?
I believe all development on state-owned excess property is subject to prevailing wage.
That's correct. Well, if you're still writing a question, would you mind raising your hand just so that we don't leave? We certainly want to make sure everything is addressed, but in the event that you're still contemplating your question as it's written, maybe you can raise your hand and we can pivot over to more of a live Q&A.
Good point. I'm not seeing any written questions. So if anybody has additional questions at this point, feel free to raise your hand. We will give it, I would say, another minute or two. And in the meantime, I will just reiterate, of course, that we are open to questions. Josh, remind me, it's through the end of the month, I believe.
Yes.
To be submitted in writing. So.
Yep. Thanks, Michael. Mind reader. Yes. Until August 31st. And then the state will respond to any additional questions on September 7th. And please feel free to check back with me at any time as to when and when we will be posting this presentation as well as this meeting. It should be though shortly, and you can also continue to check the state website for additional information.
And Josh, I imagine we could send a message out to all registered folks who are here when we've done that.
Absolutely.
So. All right. I am still not seeing any more written questions, and I don't believe we have any hands raised. So at this point, in respect to everybody's time, I think we will go ahead and conclude the meeting.
Excellent. Thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate your time and look forward to the RFQ submittal date.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.